Here we are again, folks. It's Brother Peter with tidbits from the Word. I'm coming to you today with something that the Lord has shown me that every single last one of us will have in our life if we disobey what God says for us to do. And that's at any time. That's at any time. Anything that we disobey God in is going to bring a distress on us between God and ourselves. And we're going to have to back up and we're going to have to pray about it. David wrote many of the Psalms. And in the Psalms that David wrote, he wrote many of them in distress. The 9th Psalm that he wrote in distress is Psalm 31. In Psalm 31, he is asking God to reunite him now, and he's in a sense begging God to reunite him. Now I can tell you what the first thing we can do when we need to be reunited with God, if we've done something to cause us distress, is to say, God, I did wrong. More than likely you did it deliberately. I did it deliberately, and I beg your mercy, and I ask you to forgive me right now for it, and I don't have to go on and pray 18 different requests to God because I've got the answer in the first request. And God will forgive us. He'll put us back in where we need to be. He'll show us what we need to do. Now, the forgiveness is the easy part for God. The part that comes in for you, if you've wronged somebody, you need to right that. You need to make that right. Whatever you've done, you need to make that right. Even though you're forgiven, there are consequences for sin. If you stole $50 from somebody and you ask God to forgive you for it, you got to return that $50. And the best thing you could do would be to put another 50 with it, make it 100, and say, I stole $50 from you. I'm the one that stole that $50 is gone, and here's 100 back. Do you think that will erase or make amends on all of it with another person? No, but it will make him feel better. And it will also make you do right. Look at what the first two words in this Psalm 31 is, in thee. David is recognizing now, in thee, O Lord, do I put my trust. Let me never be ashamed. Deliver me in thy righteousness. Is God your Lord? Is God your Lord? If he is, then you need constant recognition of him. Morning, noon, and night, hour by hour, minute by minute, day by day, week by week, throughout the rest of your living days. Now, look at verse 2. Bow down thine ear to me. Deliver me speedily. Be thou my strong rock, for an house of defense to save me. David's evidently got himself in a peck of trouble. And he's in this peck of trouble, and he's now being ashamed. He's ashamed. And he knows the only way now to get away from that shame, to get back here, is to get the righteousness of God on his side. And in verse 2, where he asks him to bow down his ear, deliver him speedily. And then he gives God preeminence, and he says, thou art my strong rock. Yes, he knew that God was his strong rock. The rock that he needed to be in and on at all times. And then he says, be my house of defense. Be my house of defense to save me. Be that one that will save me from the problem that I made for myself. You get in the middle and make that thing work. Would you please, God? Lead me, he said, verse 3. For thou art my rock and my fortress. Therefore, for thy name's sake, lead me and guide me. Now, he's kind of probing his Lord and his God to say, what he said right here, for thy name's sake. He knows that God is going to do everything for his name's sake. And he's going to do it for us, for his name's sake. Pull me out of the net that they have laid privately for me, for thou art my strength. This net that got laid for David was not just made by others privately for him because that he was behaving, but because he wasn't behaving, because he did something that caused him to have this problem. He said, I have hated them that regard lying, vanities, but I trust in thee, Lord. I will be glad and rejoice in thy mercy, for thou hast considered my trouble. Thou hast known my soul in adversities, and hast not shut me up into the hand of the enemy. Thou hast set my feet in a large room. Wow. Evidently, David got a little vision here of the room of God, the place that's a large room. In this particular psalm, I do not know if it was being prayed because his son was trying to take his throne, or why it was being prayed by. Whatever it was being prayed for, the stem of it started way back when David did some disobedient things. And even though he was forgiven, a little later on in life, even though he was forgiven, he was suffering the consequences of the things that he did. For instance, you can't bring a child into the world and not suffer the consequences of having that child. If you decide you're not going to take care of it and you're not going to marry the woman, you're not going to feed her, she goes to the courthouse. And the judge says, you will pay her until that child's 18 years old, so much a week. And that's the consequences. That's it. From the action that you did, you're getting the consequences. You may even get forgiven by God, but that doesn't erase the fact you've got to pay the penalty. You're going to have to pay the penalty even though you are forgiven. And so there's many things that David did that he found that he shouldn't have done. 7 that was to lead me in your name's sake, and 8 was to guide me for your name's sake, and pull me out of the net that they've laid for me, and 10 was to have mercy on me, deliver me from my enemies. Now these people have become his enemies, and deliver me from my persecutors. Now they're persecuting him. And make your face shine upon me. David knew in the face of God, our Lord Jesus Christ in the face of God shines on us. There is no darkness in that shining. There is no shadow of darkness there. For mercy's sake. In verse 17, he said, let me not be ashamed again. And let the wicked be ashamed, he said. Let the wicked be ashamed. Let them be silent in hell. Now, he got a little vengeance to speak in here. And in verse 18, let their lying lips be quieted. So he had got something started that was got after him like a hive of bees. When you were a kid, did you ever take a stick or rock and throw it at a bee? You come on this bee's nest hanging in a tree. You ought to walk by and leave well enough alone, but no, you're a kid and you're a boy, and you're going to throw a rock or two at it just to see what will happen. Well, I'll tell you what, when you hit that thing, them hornets know where that rock come from. And they're dead after you. You better be able to find you some water, because you're going to get stung all over. So, this is how sin works. Just exactly like that. You get into it, and it's going to come and sting you like a hive of bees. And what he was asking for in this distress was he wanted to get back to where he could worship with his Lord and his God like he knew he needed to. But for some reason, the face of God was turned from him, and he was feeling sick in it. In verse 1, it shows that he's feeling sick. In verse 14, it shows over here. Let's get over there a second. In verse 14, he said, "But I trust in thee, O Lord. I said, thou art my God." Now he's saying, I'm going to put all my trust in you, O Lord, and you are my God. And what a place to come to where you can come to that and get out of your distress by doing that. Verse 12 is another verse. He said, I am forgotten as a dead man, out of mind. I am like a broken vessel. Wow. He realized how bad off he was without God leading him, and his communion with God was broke. Be careful you don't break your communion with God. Let's look at verse 9. Have mercy on me, O Lord, for I am in trouble. Mine eye is consumed with grief, yea, my soul and my belly. For my life is spent with grief, and my years with singing. My strength faileth because of mine iniquity. And my bones are consumed. What is iniquity? Iniquity is known sin. If you know something in your life is a sin to you, and you continue to do it, you're living in iniquity and total rebellion against God, and that one thing will cut you off. I've been there. I done it. After I got saved, God dealt with me severely about smoking, because I was up at the jailhouse preaching right after I got saved. And he said, this preaching and smoking don't go hand in hand. He said, you're a new creature now. You put away those old things. I dropped off the beer and the cussing, but I want to keep them cigarettes. And God had to deal with me tremendously. And finally, he delivered me, and what a free man I've been since. Hey, do you know if it's something you don't desire, you don't miss it? He took the desire from me. And he will take the desire from you, whatever it is that's causing you that grief. Now, the reproach that was on David, I'm believing here that David had a problem with wanting more than one wife, wanting more than one woman in his life. And he didn't have to do that. David did not have to use the young part of his life that way. He could have gave himself completely to God and escaped where he was right here. And here we go, verse 11. He said, I am a reproach among all mine enemies, but especially among my neighbors, and a fear to mine acquaintances. They that did see me without fled from me. Wow. This man, not only did he have an inside wicked problem, but he had an outside problem that people were not wanting to be around him. What a tough place to be if you're God's person. If you're God's child today, make things right with the Lord. Get things right. You have to cut the tongue out of your head. If you've said things you can't take back, do all the apologies you can, and get back in and run and ask God to forgive you, reunite you, make you to be the person that you are supposed to be in the Lord Jesus Christ. And you will have the rest of your days be fulfilled with what God would have for you. This is Brother Peter. Got to go now. My time's come and gone. With tidbits from the Word. See you next time. Bye-bye. I better shut her down, hadn't I? Well...